Welcome to today's, is it show or is it broadcast? What do we want to call these things, Megan?
I don't know. My grandparents are saying, I watch you on the TV every day.
Oh, it's so cute. I love it. So these are, I guess, conversations is what we've been calling it. But thank you for joining us with another leadership conversation. We have a special guest, Sarah Howard, on your screen somewhere. She's on the bottom for me right now. But we're excited to have Sarah join us, as Sarah is an attorney, but specializing in employment and civil rights, which we know there are just so many questions that you all have on your employment status, what's right, what's wrong, all of those many things where it feels like there's no clarity in it at all right now. So we are just going to pepper Sarah with questions. She says she's been studying, so we'll see how well she has studied over the last little bit to be prepared for us. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. We'd love to answer whatever questions you might have to help us lead this conversation. So feel free to leave a comment, acknowledging something, adding value to the conversation, or asking a question. So I'm Steve Oakers. I am in my garage because that's the quietest place I have been able to find to have to do these recordings. You know, I'm actually going to run a 100-foot cord out of the Ethernet to my garage today to try to have better internet. And I'm hoping that that doesn't last for too long before I can just go back to my office, but that's another topic. Megan, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm way better that the sun came out.
Yeah.
I'm in my home office. The doorbell has rang a couple of times. I now have a sign on it because all the little boys and one little girl are running around the neighborhood. So I'm good. I'm grateful.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. And Sarah, welcome to the conversation. Thanks for spending the time. I'm sure your phone is blowing up. So to carve out an hour, we really sort of your bio, if you would, where you're at and how you're coping right now.
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on the my face, as my mother would call it. So we are coping as well as everyone else, I think. We are grateful to be healthy and wanting everything to get back to normal as soon as humanly possible, like everybody else. I am currently at my parents' condo that they can't come back to at the moment because they are sheltering in place at home, which is why there's nothing behind me, so I don't reveal my parents' location to the greater internet. But we have to take shifts in our house between homeschooling and working with my husband and my two precocious small girls who like to join in on these conversations. So that's why they're not going to be popping up these days.
How old are they?
They are 6 and 10. So
yeah.
My
10-year-old wants to participate. He's like, why can't they say hi to 500 people? And I'm like, you know, we'll get you there eventually.
Right. And they've got lots of interesting observations about things that you're saying and you know, things they need right now. So
absolutely.
So yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your current role, like what are you doing, right? So lawyer, can you give us the bio before we just jump into all the questions?
Absolutely. I live on the lakeshore and I am a partner in a small firm in Grand Rapids that has been doing employee rights, labor union practice, other civil rights since the late 1960s. And I was lucky enough to join them 5 years ago. And so we get to talk to people about all kinds of work situations and other situations and try and help them come up with solutions, which is a super great job. So
yeah. So we obviously are talking leadership, and we'll get into like the meat and potatoes of the new world. How has your job or your role shifted in the last, what is 2 weeks, but feels like 2 years, right? Like how have you operated? Are you guys, you're working out of your parents' condo? Are you going in some? Like, how are you balancing the workload to whatever life looks like now?
Well, I think much like everybody else, I do a lot of work at my home office. with my kids and my husband around, and I do a lot of work here when I can. And I go into our office twice a week to help process the payroll and make photocopies and bring in the mail, because we have to limit the number of people in our
Right.
office, and missing my team quite a bit, a lot actually. So, but that's kind of what we've been doing, just like everybody else, making do. Like, it's a strange time to be a courtroom lawyer right now, because the courts have been trying to limit all the hearings that they can. So things I was supposed to have been postponed or canceled. We've met with new clients like this on Zoom, like everybody else, instead of face-to-face for the first time like we normally like to. But I've been fielding all kinds of questions from people who are experiencing job loss, layoff, other types of questions. So
yeah. Megan, do you have any before we just jump into all the questions, or any thoughts on how you want to progress?
No, I think, I mean, my conversation with Sarah, I learned, is fun last night. So I think we allow people to ask questions that they have inside of the feed. Happy birthday, because it's Sarah's birthday tomorrow. And
thank you.
Crystal just said happy birthday to
Yeah, she shouted you out.
But no, I think we utilize this space to get people as much information as they want. I do think that your language question and definition of layoff, furlough, I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, so I guess let's maybe start with that, Sarah, in just some vocabulary that's used or not used, and getting clarity around that vocabulary. So then when we talk about different situations, we have the vocabulary down. And it, you know, I looked at it like you used to have, like, man, I fired you, right? You're out. I was a painter before I got in real estate, so we were laid off multiple times in the winter when there wasn't enough projects. And you know, when the projects came back in a month or 2 months, then we would come back to work. We would just be laid off, and that was how it worked, right? And now there's this whole thing called furloughing, which is a completely different word that I have ever used or heard until just the last couple of weeks. And then I have friends texting me like, I just got furloughed, and I'm like, so can you give us an understanding of those sort of worlds that we're working in right now? I mean, we can talk about adjusted pay. There's plenty more that we can dive in, but this idea of probably the idea of more like the layoff to furlough, how do we balance what those are, and how are employers using that or abusing it, either way?
Well, I mean, there's no real legal accepted definition for what's a layoff versus what's a furlough. You're right. We didn't used to hear the word furlough outside of, like, you know, military contexts or other contexts until a couple of weeks ago. I think it's the way people have tried to communicate to their employees, we have to lay you off right now, and we're really hoping to bring you back. Because traditionally layoff meant you were laid off indefinitely, very possibly forever. And people are trying to communicate, you know, gosh, we really want to bring you back, and try and soften the blow a bit.
Yeah.
So there's no real common accepted definition. And right now is no different than any other time. It is in an employee's best interest, I think, to ask their employer politely, of course, what they anticipate. And they might not know right now, but it helps you to know for planning for your family for the future,
right,
if they have any expectation of bringing you back, or if they think this is forever. And just because they're using one word or the other, I don't think is definitive for any particular employer. You're still entitled to unemployment regardless of what the employer expects if you're laid off or if you're terminated. But right now, I don't think it does anyone any good to hide the ball from each other or not talk about truths we don't really want to face, because the truth is better than something which is overly hopeful or overly optimistic, I think, for people.
Yeah. Are you seeing that though? Like, I love the idea that a corporation would actually communicate clearly what their intentions are when they're saying you're furloughed. are you actually seeing employers doing that? Like, hey, we're furloughing you and our expected return date is here if all else plays out like we're hoping it is? Or is that not really like, I mean, I love the concept of saying, hey, we're going to put you on temporary layoff / furlough, and our intent is to bring you back. But are you seeing people actually getting that clarity to say, yeah, you should get your resume working or not?
The most information I think we see employers giving, and I get it, I understand why they're doing that, is to say, we hope to bring you back, but we can't give you any information about when or if that's going to happen, which is not a statement. We would like to, like, you're not being fired. It's not because of you or you know, kind of like when you're ending a relationship, it's not you, it's the economic conditions. But, but you know, because I think what I think is really unfair is when an employer can't have a hard conversation and say it is you, and they're like, oh, you're laid off, and leaves some kind of expectation they might get called back when in actuality they just wanted to get rid of this person for a long time. So I think it's better to say you're being fired if that's the actual issue, but I digress. So I think that a lot of places are saying, at best, we would like to bring you back, we don't know when or how. And
that word furlough that's what people are believing that furlough really is this idea of, I'm laying you off for a period of time to pull you back in.
But that's sort of the colloquial definition, the meaning people think it has, but just like all of these other words, they could mean different things to different people. So in my view, there's really no difference between a furlough and a layoff. It's the same concept.
Okay. When so we have heard this idea of furloughing equals you can keep your health insurance, where laid off means you can't. Is that a definition that people are using, the furlough, or could someone be laid off and still keep their health insurance? Other than COBRA, right? COBRA is different, but this idea of as an employer, I'm still gonna pay your health insurance for a period of time while you're furloughed, and compared to laid off. That why people use word?
Again, there's no precise legal definition of what the two mean. Yeah. So it's really up to your employer what the health insurance policy provides for, what status you've been put on. Yeah. So if your employer is keeping you on, but you're entitled to the expanded leave under the FFCRA, the new expanded emergency family medical leave act, then a lot of times they're required to continue your health insurance, or required to pay you under the terms there and bring you back when they're able to. But an employer can still lay you off even if you'd otherwise be entitled to that kind of leave, and that's not illegal if they were otherwise going to lay you off and otherwise have a legitimate reason for laying you off. And people have no obligation to continue health insurance, no legal obligation to continue health insurance if they lay you off. They can do that, or you're always entitled to COBRA, where you pay for the cost of the group health insurance for up to a period of time. But there's no, furlough doesn't mean you get health insurance. Layoff doesn't mean you don't. It really depends on what the employer is willing to do.
Have you seen people in positions where they're being forced to use their vacation time?
Well, absolutely. That's still lawful. You can be forced to use your vacation time under FMLA too. FMLA, under normal circumstances, only gives you 12 weeks of unpaid leave. So if you want to be paid, the employer can force you to use your vacation time. Some employers are generous and will pay you during an FMLA leave for whatever reason, but you can still be required to use vacation time up. So, and there is the DOL, the Department of Labor, is putting out guidance about how that statute is going to work with the new FFCRA and about providing paid leave. I think a lot of employers are going to be able to give people paid leave without making them use their vacation time, because they're supposed to get these tax credits that are supposed to offset the cost of being able to continue to give paid leave. So I don't think, hopefully we won't see a lot of employers saying you have to burn through your vacation time, because they're essentially being given money by the government to keep people on the payroll versus turning them over to unemployment. But an employer could probably do that if that's how they felt they needed to or wanted to do things.
Do you have any feeling on how expeditiously you think that money will actually arrive? I know those are two separate questions. One, right, obviously, is the SBA and the small business lending. And then we can talk about the unemployment thing, because that was all over my Facebook feed today. Like, I applied on this day. When do I get the money for this? But just that first one for small business owners, what do you think?
Nobody has any idea right now. There's been a lot of speculation. I think there's going to be a real push to release it as soon as possible. So I do think you could see it maybe within a week or two. That wouldn't shock me. But given all of the administrative problem they've already had giving it out, knowing what the requirements are for it, knowing who can and can't, or who should and shouldn't apply for it, I could easily see it taking a longer time than a week or two. But I know there's a real push to try and get it out, because the last thing we want is all of our restaurants failing, or all of our concert venues or other places that are totally shut down and rely so heavily on constant streams of revenue. So
Right.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we're
going.
clear. I want to make sure we're clear. Like, you're talking right now, Sarah, about the small business payroll, or are you talking about the unemployment for an individual?
Yes.
There's two separate things there. I don't want to confuse people.
Yeah. So the Small Business Administration, PPP, the Paycheck Protection Plan, or the emergency loans. When you talk about unemployment insurance, they have more of an established way of paying out. They're overwhelmed right now. They have so many applications and they can't handle the volume. But in terms of knowing what to do and how to pay people, that's a thing that they do. So my guess is, and they haven't always done it well, but they've recovered from some of their mistakes over the past few years, and they already do it. So for people that are traditional unemployment applicants, it's going to be slowed down based on the volume, but they know how to do it, and they do it. They have systems set up. For people who are non-traditional unemployment applicants, like the self-employed gig workers, that is going to be a little more challenging, because guidance keeps sort of trickling out from the DOL about who qualifies now, who wouldn't normally under normal circumstances. So I think those people are going to see more of a delay. I imagine it's going to take 2, 3, 4 weeks from employment. I hope not, but I think people should brace for that.
And all those people are getting denied right now, right? Like, anybody who's under self-employment, even though it's in the drop-down menu, and I've heard this before, everybody's just going to get applied or denied because the system isn't set up that direction, right?
That's my understanding. Yeah, that is happening now. It's probably going to continue to happen. Unemployment saying if you've applied in the last 3 weeks, you don't have to reapply. When they get the new rules implemented, that they will reconsider you. But people are going to have to keep a real close eye on that. And if their 3 weeks go by, I think they may have to submit a second application, which nobody hopes happens, because that's going to make life a lot more difficult. But
submit a separate application, you mean go back into and redo the entire account, right?
Right. And right now, I haven't told anybody to do that, because that doesn't make sense. It's so difficult to do it the first time. And unemployment saying they are going to be able to reconsider applications which become eligible under these new rules. So right now there's nothing else to do but hope for the best, but I wouldn't rule out the inability of the system to reboot that quickly, unfortunately, for newer people who wouldn't have qualified before and qualify now under those expanded rules.
Yeah, so can we clarify those ideas, right? So we have, obviously, Megan and I's circle have a lot of independent contractors, right? Real estate professionals. And so their question that they consistently keep on asking is, should I apply now, or should I wait until the system is working and I know who I need to put down on the form, right? There's discussion, especially in the real estate space, is do I put myself down as an independent contractor, or do I put my broker down, even though my broker has never paid me per se in that space? So are you communicating to individuals, go ahead and apply no matter what now, Or are you saying, hey, let's just wait this thing out another 5 days or 10 days or whatever until the system is functioning and then apply? How are you telling, this might create a mad rush, Megan, but I guess the question is, should the real estate professionals that talk to us, that ask us, that want to know, should they apply today to get started on the process instead of waiting until they have more clarity on the process?
Well, I will tell you that the best information as of this moment, up until a few days ago, I was telling people to wait. Now I've reconsidered that opinion, and I'm telling people, you don't have to make a mad rush, because it's not like with other programs where I think the money's going to run out. So you don't have to make a mad rush, but I would apply now if you are eligible under the new rules. DOL has started to put out some state unemployment agencies have started to get some beginning guidance. They definitely recognize that they will be able to give benefits to those individuals. So I think I would apply now and get in there and wait. You might have to reapply if they don't get it going soon enough, but I don't think that's likely to happen. And you might as well get in line now and get your application going versus waiting, because at least you'll feel like you've done something and started the process.
What can you give us the qualifications of an independent contractor that would allow them to do so? Because again, Megan and I've had this conversation with a number of people. There's 3,200 members in the Grand Rapids Association of Realtors, and I'm not saying that right because they changed their name a couple of years ago and I always mess it up. But ultimately, within our association, there's 3,200 members. There's probably 1,000 or more in Megan's. And out of that group, only 20% of those people actually produced anything. And I'm just being really blunt, right? There is 80% of people that might have only sold 2 houses last year, and they might actually make more money if they're on unemployment than they did all of last year. And again, I'm just being blunt. I'm sorry if that's too blunt, but that's just who I am. So
my dad actually has a real estate license that I don't think he's sold anything on since like the 1970s. Right. So yeah, I imagine there's lots of people in all kinds of situations that have licenses and
So does your dad qualify for association? He pays some dues. Like, how do those qualify? Like, do you have to show that you actually got paid something last year? Or can I just say, I worked really hard as a real estate agent. I have my license. It's with Megan's brokerage or Steve's brokerage, and I'm state licensed. So I am an independent contractor. I'm not getting paid because I'm not selling anything right now. I qualify. Like, where does that line come in?
Well, first of all, I don't think my dad's belonged to even paid for his license in a really long time. So that would be kind of a moot point. And, but what I will tell you is that I don't think anyone knows, but I suspect it's going to be based on, like it is with unemployment for regular traditional employees, it's going to be based on what did you make in some period of time in the past.
Yeah.
And then
so you'd have to write that down.
Right. You'd have to be able to show through returns, other documentation. This is what I made for some period of time looking into the past. And that's how they because that's how they do unemployment. That's how they approximate what you're going to get and your eligibility. So how long did you work for, that type of thing, to be sure that you're eligible. So I expect it's going to be the same with everybody else. So somebody who has a license, who even belongs to an organization, but who has had a hobby license or for whatever reason hasn't actually sold anything, is probably, I imagine, not going to be eligible for that much in unemployment. I don't know that. They might decide we're going to let everybody have some eligibility because we want to keep people afloat right now. But I would imagine that's how they're going to do it.
Right. So there's 2 parts of the CARES Act, from my understanding, with unemployment, and maybe I'm wrong, sir, and you can clear this up. And if this is an accountant question, you just tell us this is an accountant person. But there is a set amount of money that traditionally comes out based on percentage of income, which is normal unemployment. And then there's the guaranteed underneath the CARES Act unemployment amount, from my understanding. Mm-hmm. So even if I don't get the full $300 and some odd or whatever that number is, from unemployment a week, or $600. I'm probably goofing up who pays more, who pays less. But there is like from my understanding, there's a guaranteed amount, no matter how much income you had, if you qualify underneath unemployment, is that what your understanding is too? So I sell houses and I made $12,000 last year, or I made $15,000 last year, and I'm an independent contractor. So I fall underneath the threshold of the full amount for unemployment, but I still have got the guarantee of the Federal CARES Act unemployment side. Do you have any sense of that?
I don't. And that's because I don't think anyone has any sense of it right now.
Yep,
but
great.
it would not surprise me if they decided to give something to people who apply based on a very low threshold or no threshold. But
right.
there isn't real clear guidance yet on what's going to happen,
right.
or how they're going to measure eligibility, because but I suspect that they're going to try and mirror, to the extent that they can, what they do with employees, traditional employees.
Right.
How much did you make in the past, and use that to approximate like it was a wage.
Yeah, it was inside. So I did it because I wanted to see what it looked like for my team at Blue West. And it was getting pretty specific. I don't know if they're reworking that system, but it said, like, do you have incoming commissions from deals that were done prior to the COVID crisis? How many of those deals were pending? And then mine's a little bit different because I pay myself a salary. I don't, get to keep that side of it. But I went into it as if I was an agent in a straight 1099, and it was getting there. I think that they're going to definitely be looking at what happened in 2018, 2019. I guess the easy way, though, I mean, when we were talking before, like, sometimes in order to, how did you say that? It was so eloquent. Like, in order to benefit everybody, you end up creating holes where people can also take advantage.
Yeah, it's impossible to create a system that is entirely fair. And that's when you have months and months to think about how to do it. When you have like a few days to think about how to do it, you create systems that have massive problems. There's just no way around that. And you have to decide, do we want to make the system super stingy so that we try to keep people who are cheating it from recognize that we're denying people who deserve some help? Or do we want to make the system pretty loose and open and accept that we're going to have people that we may not ultimately think deserve the money, but we're careful to let in those who need the help? And I think the government's position right now is the latter. We want to be sure that people who need the help get the help, and we don't have time to create the most perfect administrative system we can. So we're just going to be imperfect about it, and some people might cheat us, and that's just how that goes. And frankly, I think that's the better option right now for a number of reasons, because we want to be good people and because we want the economy to survive, and it doesn't really help if our friends and neighbors can't access this right now.
Right.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about the ethics of this? And I know there's the law, and then there's ethics, and there's this balance sometimes. And how do I balance the law compared to how do I just be an ethical human being? And I guess when I say ethics is, Megan and I have been consistently having this debate of the word work, and what is work and what is not work, right? And so I'm having this debate in my head of the ethics of what am I doing? Am I working while talking to Sarah and Megan right now? Or should I lay myself off and still talk to Megan and Sarah, right? Because I pay myself a salary underneath my business, so I technically could lay myself off at some point and fill out the paperwork. But I think that that's also in the corporate America side or in small business side is, hey, just so you know, it's better for me to lay you off, but you still have to check your email, and I need you to respond to these things just to keep these things going. Are you okay with that? I think there might be a sense that that's occurring, of this ethical balance between, like, it's better for you financially for me to lay you off, but yet I still need you to do a little bit of work for me.
Right.
I've had that people say that to me over the last couple of weeks of like, hey Steve, you might be better off laying people off and then just have them do a little bit. And it's like, wait a minute, like I thought there was a line there, but it seems like those lines are getting so blurry of that, right? Or hey, you have to take your 2 weeks off vacation time, but during that vacation time you still are required to check your email and respond a couple times to me. Like how are you balancing that when people are reaching out to you, Sarah, right now? Employees saying, I was just laid off, or I was asked to take my family leave or take vacation time, and yet I still am being asked to respond or do work.
That is a great question. And
sorry, that was a long one.
No, it's a good question and a really good discussion that I think people need to be having with themselves right now. And both attorneys who give advice to employers and attorneys like me who give advice to employees need to be having this conversation. Because I think that people really need to think about that when they're making decisions about their employees, and not everybody makes those decisions. Some people take the view like they do when they do their taxes, that I'm entitled to claim everything I possibly could, and whether it's questionable or not, and that, if I can get away with paying no taxes as a business, I've won, and I'm supposed to take advantage of the system in that way. And not all of us feel like that, because roads and bridges and things that we need to conduct business don't get built when some people don't pay taxes.
Right.
But there's not, just like with the tax system, there's not going to be a lot of probably check on businesses and other people who take advantage of some of these programs in a way that they're not intended, in a way that we all know is not cool. So it's not it's particularly inappropriate and potentially illegal to put somebody on layoff status so that they can collect unemployment and then tell them, I want you to be doing work. Like if you legitimately need to cut their hours and still have them do some work, but you cannot pay them full time anymore. People can make claims for partial unemployment. Like I've been cut from 40 hours to 20 hours. I'm now a part-time employee. People can collect part of the unemployment and part from their employer. And that's what people should be doing if they're truly in that space.
Can you restate that, Sarah? Because I don't think like that's worth this whole conversation to me, because I'm going to have that conversation with a couple of my employees as we've adjusted their roles and pay and stuff. Is like, okay, hey, like I'm bringing pay down to this to make sure that we can survive for a significant amount of time. Are you okay with it? Was our conversations, which might not be HR approved, but they said thank you for at least having that conversation with me. So can you help me understand that, or walk through someone? I even see some of the comments of I work from home. It's such a gray area. Well, if I work from home and I've been put on half time because I have to balance, I can't do all the things I traditionally would, they can still claim unemployment for part-time for that other half of their work that they didn't get?
If you've been cut and you've been officially cut, like your employer gives you, and this is what they should do, they should give you a notice that you're being cut, your position, you're being laid off from your full-time position, you're being kept in a part-time capacity, so that you can go to make a claim for benefits. You, as an employer, it's inappropriate to then expect full-time work from somebody at home in that situation. If you can only pay for part-time work, you should only be getting part-time work from that employee. And people might have Fair Labor Standards Act claims against their employers if they're being required to work more than they're getting paid for. There's a lot of other potential issues that people might have. When this is all over, I don't know that the government's going to be particularly pleased if they find out that employers are putting people on layoff status and then still telling them they have to work if they want to expect to come back to work when this is all over on the sly. that's going to be open people up for claims. So, and this is really more what employer side attorneys advise their clients about. But, you know, when I'm advising an employee who says I'm being asked to work from home, or I'm under normal circumstances, I'm being asked to work when I'm not at work, and that employee is entitled to be paid overtime or things under the FLSA, which is what one of my partners, Kathy Smith Kennedy, mostly does, or she does all the FLSA work in our office. You know, she's going to talk about they've got a claim, and that's the kind of thing that's going to happen to employers when this is all over, because this will be all over at some point. We all know that. We have to remember that, even if we don't know when it's happening. And people still have an obligation to treat people fairly, follow the law, even though right now they feel like all bets, some people, not everyone, some people feel like all bets are off and they just need to do what they need to do for survival. Which is, you know, some people are finding out that they have employers who are willing to act in a way that they don't particularly like, and some people are finding out that their employers are really stepping up when the going gets tough. So
right. I think even that statement of part-time pay, can you help expand on that a little bit, Sarah? Because I know there's a lot in corporate America and others that have said, and myself included, is I want to keep you running. We're working more than ever. We're not doing the same work, but we're working more than ever. I need to adjust your pay down by X%, right? We saw that of a big manufacturer in town that manufactures furniture. I'll leave their name off the radar, but they, you know, the corporate staff was told, hey, you're going to get a pay cut by 50%, right? So it's just like, instead of you're going to go to 2 week or, you know, part-time, it's no, we're just going to pay you half. But we still expect you to work. How do you balance? That's every employer has that right to adjust someone's pay, but then I'm assuming they're not allowed to go and collect unemployment if they're getting still paid, right? How do you balance that, like half pay to full work?
That is a great question. I mean, in that circumstance, I think that, you know, those employees aren't going to get unemployment, be eligible for unemployment, because now they have different terms of employment. The employer has said, what I intend to do is I intend to keep you as a full-time employee, and now I am offering you much less to do that job. And in the regular economy, that's completely allowed unless you're covered by a union contract or some other type of binding contract, which almost nobody has in this country. Except 50% pay for doing the work, the same job. That's your new employment arrangement with this employer. And employees, I think, have to make those decisions for themselves. So do I believe that this company is doing that because that's what they need to do, and I'm still believe in the cause and I'm going to keep working here for that? Yeah. Do I want to accept those conditions, or am I going to try to look for work somewhere else? You know, is it that this is still the best I can do in this economy and I can't go somewhere else? And I'm going to accept that and suck it up, and that's what I have to do. People have to make those decisions, unfortunately. And as you point out, there's nothing illegal about cutting somebody's pay by 50% if you don't have one of these other protections in place, as most people don't. So, and you know, in a normal economy, if your employer walked in and did that one day, you'd probably be able to go somewhere else and leave, and you would. But right now, employers know you can't, and some employers have to do that, and their employees are going to pitch in, and they believe in that team and are part of that team.
Right,
and
the culture.
What they want to do. Yeah, and some people are going to question whether their employers really need to do that, and think about, am I going to try and make tracks out of here as soon as I possibly can?
I think, you know, and that's the retention piece of it is so hard. Like, John employs 15 people, and, you know, it's a remarkable team at Evenbound, and trying to hold the space as a leader to do what's fair and right. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is, in the absence of communication, assumptions are made. And so I think it's so important where you started in saying, like, even if it's bad news, like, communicate bad news. Even if it's, I don't know right now, or, oh, that just changed in the 36 hours since I told you that information. I think as leaders, it's so important to be in the space of saying, like, I don't know, but I promise you I'm doing everything that I can to handle this ethically and fairly. But retention scares me. You know, some of this stuff where people are doing strange things. I mean, I'd cry crocodile tears if I lost, you know, people that work for both of our companies. So I think people need to think about that too. What's fair to employees, and how do you keep them with you? Because it's not to say they couldn't be interviewing this week for a job that starts in 4 months.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and you know, I don't want to be unfair to employers either, both because
No.
in my previous life, I advised employers. I am an employer, a small employer, but I am an employer.
You're great.
And I've known, well, you know, thank you. I guess we'll watch for the Facebook comments from anybody that's working with me right now. But I get it, and I understand that there are lots of people just trying to do the best that they can. And so there's no way to generalize over this, you know, with what people are doing and trying to do. But there's going to be, like in every other situation, every other economy, there's a wide range of reactions from employers to what they're going to do, how they're going to treat people, how they're going to try to remain cohesive. And I just think that it's important for employees to also try to communicate honestly with their employer, and try to get through this and understand that their relationship with their employer might break up during this period, and they might need to be looking for something else.
Yeah.
So
I think that we talked about that with Jim yesterday, Megan. The transparency and the realness is where the adjustment, it seems like the true leaders are coming out, right? Like when stuff hits the fan, you're either a leader that's willing to step up and be transparent, or you hide behind whatever curtain you can hide behind. There's very little hiding right now. I don't think anybody can really hide that well anymore, because people are seeking answers, and they're not going to let you go until they get the answers that they at least are seeking, or that you don't communicate and they know that that's the reason you're not communicating. Sarah, can you give us a couple of examples maybe of companies / employers that you believe are doing this well? Not that they're doing the like pay well or whatever, but they're doing the communication to their staff and to their employees well, and they're trying to figure that out. And then also probably on the flip side, like things that you've seen that, man, like these are the pitfalls that we're seeing on the employer side, and then vice versa on the employee side. Could you give us some like, hey, if this is what I'm seeing that's been done well on both sides, and then this is what I'm seeing that is not being done well on both.
sure. Hey, I get the Harvard Business Review email every day with new articles and things about, because I'm kind of nerdy like that. I like to read that kind of stuff. And, you know, they describe that in times like these, when you lead a business, it's important to be honest with people, and to be appropriately concerned, but not Chicken Little, because you have to inspire as much confidence as you can in employees that this is the plan we have, even if the plan's changing every day, about how we're going to survive, how we're going to try and keep the team together, how we're going to adapt to different conditions here. And you see lots of employers doing that very well. We're doing our best where I work to try and do that, and talk about ways in which we can be responsive to our customers and clients and still make enough money, have enough cash flow to pay all of us. So we're talking about that ourselves. And I've heard from other people who have employers who are doing a very admirable job of trying to keep people on, trying to talk to them about ways in which they can provide goods and services even right now and pivot, so to speak, on a dime.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen other employers who I think really forget their heads right now, and they start to let their worst natures take over when they feel like things could get difficult in the coming weeks and months, and do things that maybe I'm concerned that I feel like are potentially illegal, things you would never dream of doing in a regular economy, you know, laying people off in a manner that selects people in a way that violates the law, or do other things that I think is very disheartening. We're seeing that too. But it's happening. And
so an example that Sarah might be like, hey, you have kids, so we'll keep you on, but you don't, you're a single person, or they're looking at the payroll differently and saying, okay, well, you're younger, we pay you less, so we'll keep you on, but we'll keep, is that what you're sort of communicating in that space that you would say is gray?
Well, what you just described, there's nothing illegal with that per se. If your reason is I'm keeping on people who have children or not children, as long as you're not basing it on who's a man, who's a woman, or some other protective characteristic, that's not illegal. Sometimes we think that you can end up in effect favoring one protected group over another when you think you're making decisions based on who has kids or who doesn't have kids. But if people are entitled to certain protections and not to be laid off or fired because they're pregnant and about to take a maternity leave, or not to be laid off or fired because they are old. And we're going to get rid of all the elderly employees first, and we're picking them because they're elderly. Like, you can lay people off, but you're not allowed to select people in order for layoff, fire people because they fall into a protected class. And so when you're doing those things, that's still not legal, even when we're in an economic crisis. Still uncool, still against the law. So there's a lot of things that are uncool that employers can do, which are perfectly legal. And that's always been the case. It's always going to be the case. But, I think there's going to be some employers who respond to this in a way that is kind of blatantly illegal. That's always going to happen. And so there are plenty of great employer side lawyers out there who can talk you through your options and let you know what you can and cannot do. And I hope that employers talk to my colleagues on the other side of the line in this work and get some good advice about what they can and can't do.
That is a question a couple of times, and I got a few text messages too. What is the best way, if you're in that space, to get a hold of you?
So we still, like every other office, you can, our phone line still works. Erica, who answers the phone, will still pick up your call or take a message and get in touch with us, and we will call you back. You can email at info@, if we're too busy, we'll refer you to one of our competitors who does the same employee side work, so you can talk to someone. And we have we'll get you to the right person, whether it's us or somebody in another office who specializes in the particular type of problem that you have. But there are a lot of attorneys in town you can go to if you have concerns about why was I terminated or laid off, if you think that something smells about it. And sometimes people feel like it's super unfair that they were laid off or terminated, and I completely understand why they feel like it was unfair, but there's nothing illegal about it, and we tell people that all the time. But sometimes if you feel like it smells, it really does smell. So it's at least good to talk through it with another outside observer. The other thing I would say about that is that being terminated or laid off, even in a situation like right now when a lot of people are finding themselves being terminated or laid off, I mean, losing a job is one of, they say the top 5 stressful things that can ever happen in your life. And I routinely tell people who've just been laid off or fired, under normal circumstances, I recommend that you go talk to a counselor right now, because people have such a hard time dealing with it. People who've thought I'd never leave this employer, thought we'd be together forever. It's very much like a marriage. I mean, it sounds like you're giving relationship advice when you're talking about this, but people can benefit from talking to an unbiased observer, and counselors are working on Zoom just like everybody else right now. And I think that combined with the stress that everybody's feeling about the uncertainty of this situation, I think it probably makes it extra acute. And when you're out there in a situation feeling economic stress and you have to pivot your career or what you're doing, you want to be putting your best foot forward and your most emotionally healthy self when you're out there looking for a new employer or a new opportunity. And so that's a really good thing to do for that reason also.
I think that's important.
Yeah, I think we could, I mean, Sarah, do you have more stuff you want to get into that we didn't go through that in your studies you felt like we need to communicate?
No, I don't think so. These are all great, super good questions. So not that I can think about.
Yeah, because I think that's, Megan, where we have found these leadership conversations going, right? Is this idea of, you know, here's information for you, but also I think every single person this week and even last week have talked about the mental health side of this.
Yeah.
You know, Rochelle, Jim yesterday, now Sarah, of this, like, we have to remember that, like, this is a situation that's moved so fast, but you're still needed and you're still essential, right? We've had those comments consistently, and I think I just heard it from you, Sarah, is like, this is one of the toughest moments of your life, potentially, of not being employed or being told you're not needed at this point or not essential at this point in time. But I think we have to remember that that's a temporary pause to combat an illness that we can't see, right? And we have to stop for a second and make sure that we all, like, let that soak in a little bit, right? That the layoff or the furlough is all derived from the fact that we're trying to face an enemy we can't see. But just 3 weeks ago, you could put your resume out there and get 10 job offers, right? Like, it's moved that fast. And so we want everybody just to know you're needed and essential, and that we can find more support for you if you need it on the mental side, right, Megan?
Yeah, and I had a good conversation. All my people are named Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah Gray, Sarah Howard, Sarah Lukowski. So I had a good conversation with Sarah, who runs Mosaic, which in Ottawa County, pairs you with a counselor of great intake, and she'll be on Monday afternoon. But this is not socioeconomic. It's not something that only is now attacking people who have struggled with anxiety and depression. New people are coming up with things or people are coming up with things that they never knew that they had. And one of the things I thought was so interesting in that conversation was just about how now that it's quieter, there's more time to, like, hear the rumble, hear the trouble, hear the things that maybe we've shoved down into the basement. So my space for that is exactly what we're doing here in these conversations, right? Like, I know somebody who can, and just try to connect people. Someone was on Facebook last night and they're talking about an SBA lender and they needed somebody to respond. And they said, well, I'll just go to a different bank. And I learned from Sarah Gray, you can't just go to another bank. If you don't have an account at that bank, you can't do that. So all of us putting ourselves into the position, and that wasn't a debate. It was a hand slap from Steve when I said, I'm not working, and I didn't come back. It's true. I am working. I'm working in a different way. But I think any way that we can work to connect people right now to lessen the pain, it's really important. And I have so much gratitude for you, Sarah. I've thought you were, brilliant from the jump when my sweet Henry was, crawling around on the floor with your sweet Clara. You always have something to say that is unexpected and bright and makes me think. And you've been such a huge encourager of myself, my people, and I just have a ton of gratitude. So if there is somebody out there that's looking for help in this space, she has a beautiful team that I know too. Definitely, reach out. This is a really, really good bright egg that you've given us. Thank you.
That is very kind, Megan, particularly given all the things you've done to create community and help people respond to each other in a positive way, and every time, not just this time. So I'm also a mutual fan of
Thank you. And it doesn't work if you don't follow and come and be my friend. So I appreciate it. I just feel like hanging out by myself.
I don't know about you guys, but this is affecting me like that super drunk person at the end of a party. He was like, I love you so much. Like, I just keep telling my coworkers in a really inappropriate way how much I miss them, and I can't wait to see you again. And
Oh, yeah.
I miss hugs, right? So I think, yeah, I mean, one thing when Megan and I decided to do this, a week and a half ago, we randomly decided, or I convinced her really quickly, like, you're doing this with me, that our ability, Megan and I, are to be connectors. We just know this of us, right? That we do know people and people trust Megan and I. So I guess I just put that out there at the end, that if there is someone that is in need and needs to connect with somebody, if we can connect you, we will, right? And so don't hesitate in this leadership conversation to send us a private message or to just put it out there of, hey, I need this. The people that are following this want to help too. So I think that there's many bankers and lawyers and people now that are following this page that are saying, if I can be a helper, I want to be. So please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We want to be helpers while we're sitting in our garages and parents' condos and private offices along the beach shore that Megan gets to do, that I'm really jealous of.
Showed up in the windows in wetsuits. They're in full-blown wetsuits right now. They just were lifting each other up and they're like going like this. I'm like, no, dude, you can't swim.
Oh, well, that wraps another conversation. Sarah, thanks for joining us. Friday is our last one of the week, right? Which is Tracy Wilson. I had to make sure I said the name right. Tracy Wilson, which is principal of Grand Haven School. They have had to shift completely. I was thinking of this morning of, like, think of being an educator used to having pupils in your care, and now you're being forced to be an online educator. And forever we said that wasn't a thing. You shouldn't be doing that. We need people in classrooms. And now they're figuring out how to teach kids online and in a speed that I don't even know how they can keep up with it. So we're excited to have an educator. And then next week, we've got some really great people. We're going to sort of focus on wellness next week. And so we're grateful for you guys tuning in and participating. Either of you ladies have anything left to say before we sign off?
No, thank you. Stay well.
No, just thank you for doing this and thank you for having me. It was fun.
Love you, Sarah.
Good. See you guys. Thank you.